So, hello everybody, and welcome to ABM Answered, the quickfire demand generation ABM video series, or at least that's what we aim for. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Katie O'Neill, who is the founder and principal of Noetic Sales Enablement, which is you would have guessed it, sales enablement and ops consultancy. So, Katie will be covering all the ABM and demand gen headaches and challenges from an enablement perspective. I think I've given you I don't want you to do you a disservice, Katie. So do you want to give a little background about your experience?
Sure. No, that was a proper introduction. Thanks, Sam. And first and foremost, mad respect for Demand Gen, ABM, and everything you all do. I see the value in it, and I appreciate it so much. So kudos to you, and thanks for having me. So my name's Katie O'Neill. I'm based in the U.S., and my entire career has been spent in sales, both as a sales account executive and then moving into sales ops, sales admin roles, somehow diving headfirst into sales enablement for the better part of almost 10 years now. But really enjoy what I do. Set out on my own to do sales enablement. And if you're sitting here saying, what exactly is sales enablement? Best way I've come up to describe it is transforming business complexity into a compelling sales story. And that's what I do.
And that is exactly why I've asked you to join, and you've kindly joined. You've sure helped me understand it. So to run you and again the viewers through the rules, Katie in this case will be given 7 questions to respond to, all about account-based marketing and demand gen. The questions have come from or been adapted based on the data we've collected at Mixed RTMs, where over 1,000 marketers have gone through and stated what their biggest struggles are with these topics at the moment, but also we've started to include previous guests' questions. Katie, you ready to rock and roll?
Let's go.
Cool. So challenge 1 was sales team readiness. So my question would be, how do you ensure that sales teams are fully equipped and confident to engage with their target accounts in their ABM campaigns?
So for me, the first thing to do is really make sure they're aligned to what are our materials that we have available off the shelf. Once you have that identified, then it's saying, okay, what is the industry we're selling to and who are the personas within that industry that you're selling to? The important thing to note is that you need to have both, because what a CTO in a healthcare vertical cares about could be wildly different than a CTO in telecommunications and what they care about. So you really want to make sure you have an alignment to what are the priorities from the industry perspective, as well as the personas perspective is where I've seen the most success. And then the third thing is do a little bit of homework. I mean, you don't have to get really creepy and find out like where the CTO is the kid's soccer coach or something like that. But what I would say is just do your due diligence on LinkedIn. See who maybe you're mutually connected to, or if there are several folks within the organization as you get to enterprise level selling, take a look and see who is the CTO connected to within the organization. Are any of those folks key players in the conversation? And just try to paint a picture of who's who and how can they work together to be your champions when you're not in the room, to make sure that your solution is the one that they choose to solve for the need that they have.
Mm-hmm. And I promised I wouldn't do many follow-on questions, but
no, bring it on. I love questions.
Do you have a line from where personalization gets too much? So I've heard some crazy things on this interviewing people, where one marketer found out on Twitter that his ICP owned a pig farm in the countryside in.
Oh, see, that's kind of cool.
yeah. It is cool, but it also is like borderline kind of creepy. But it did work for him. But also, I share the same values as you. It can be a bit too much. Do you have like a
where's the line?
Where's the line?
To me, the fine line is I like to just stick with LinkedIn personally, and then I'll consult like a Google News or that, see if their names come up in anything. Anything where maybe they've been noted in a press release or an article, like social content that their company is putting out there. It's always nice to highlight and just say, hey, I was doing a little bit of homework, saw that you contributed to this article on the site, found it very insightful, whatever that might be. For myself personally, I guess personal go-to-market strategy for just getting to know folks and getting folks to trust the work that I do and trust working and collaborating with me has always been, everyone has lives outside of work, and you should be comfortable getting to know a person, or, I don't need to know everything like what you had for dinner last night and that, but just have casual conversation, like I was on a call yesterday and I saw this like black shadow moving behind the woman that I was speaking with. I'm like, okay, I don't know if that was a dog or a cat, but let's talk about your animal for a second. I knew it was an animal and not a person.
Nice. Well, that's you're very true. Like if it's on LinkedIn, I imagine they expect it to be out there to be used professionally, either for them if they're going for a job or against them if they're being sold to. But then, yeah, I
Now, I
guess
will
if I'm
say, I
honest,
think there are some people that are towing that line of making LinkedIn more of a personal social platform, which I'm not on board with that. Like, personally for me, I feel LinkedIn is very much a B2B forum, and I want to conduct myself professionally on there. I'm not saying I don't conduct myself
yeah,
professionally in, my personal life, but there's a line there, right? And I feel like some people are crossing that line a bit much on LinkedIn. I don't know how you address that if you see someone also, like, I don't know. I guess I don't know how, if you see someone that has a persona that's a bit over verbose on LinkedIn and they're part of the team that you're selling to, I haven't come across the best way to uh, tackle that one.
interesting. Maybe a question for our next guest.
Sure.
Um, I'll include it in. Right, let's go on because I am conscious of time.
Mhm.
Problem two: tailored content and messaging. So my question would be, how like do you enable the creation and distribution, I guess, of tailored content and messaging for the specific target accounts that you're going after?
Yeah, again, I think you have to start with the foundation. You have to have content readily available and accessible to the teams, and teams need to know how to leverage that content. You also have to build up the credibility of that content to say, hey, this worked in this scenario in the past,
Mm-hmm.
or, maybe if we adjust the framing of this message that we're trying to get across, or perhaps we change the statistic to read something else, it'll resonate more with the folks that you said will be in this meeting coming up. But there is an element of coaching that needs to go into what the sales folks understand those materials to be. And I will say, sales folks are great with, any great hallmark of a great salesperson is that they are a good storyteller. And so what you want to be able to do is have the content, whether it's a one page or a deck, complement the story they're telling, not tell the story, if that makes sense, right? The last thing anyone wants, especially if you're on a virtual meeting, is just to see someone reading off a slide. The slide, I should be able to quickly visualize what I'm seeing on there, get a sense of, okay, I kind of know what they're talking about if I don't have the voice track behind it. But then their voice track over it just complements the narrative or the message that's trying to be delivered. So I think it's, again, taking, let's say it's the shell of the talk track that comes with the slide, and then allowing them the flexibility to make it their own.
Interesting. So when you say that the shell of the talk track, just so I fully understand, are you as enablement writing out kind of the script and they're
Yep.
just reading it word for word? Yeah, and then they can
Not
slowly
quite.
like
So
tweak it.
what I like to do is I tell folks, like, take a look at the script, but make it your own. Like, these are the
Mm-hmm.
salient points that we want to make sure you're conveying so that our solution is coming across the way that's intended. The last thing you want to be doing is selling a hammer when it's actually a screwdriver. You know what I mean? So we want to make sure that they have a full understanding of what the solution is. And especially in like a SaaS tech space, it's
Yeah.
getting so polluted now with so many different things, and everyone says, oh, this can be everything for everyone. And then I've the worst thing that I have seen is that someone signs and says, yes, we want to do business with you, but then the level of effort and scoping that happens after the fact is horrendous
Mm.
because they bought something that they thought was one thing and it's actually another.
Yeah, not hitting expectations, I've realized, is some of the biggest downfalls in business. And the example I always use is McDonald's, right? People go to McDonald's all the time, but they don't expect a gourmet meal. They just know exactly what they're getting, and it keeps them coming back for more.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I might actually have. We'll take something off camera afterwards about a business thing, a product off the back of that. But anyway, problem three: onboarding and continuous learning. So this is definitely something that, before I went down the sales enablement rabbit hole, and you being one of the people teaching me about it, I didn't realize how important it was. But my question to you would be like, what are the processes kind of you use for
Mm-hmm.
onboarding people, new starters, for example, into the organization, but then also continuously kind of educating them about what the ABM plays are going to be, what the campaigns are coming up. Do you have like a specific cadence or anything like that, or am I oversimplifying?
No, no, you aren't at all. So the first thing I'll say is, so I think there's two things there. There's the ABM campaigns and kind of helping folks really understand how are we going to market and soliciting to our clients. And that's to me, ABM is really breaking it down a level from the marketing billboard, as I like to call it. Like, here's our name and lights and all the flashy things we do. ABM really drills that down. What I What I appreciate about ABM is the fact that you can really take this finite focus within the industry that you're selling to, within the specific accounts you're selling to. And again, like we've spoken about, into the persona that you're selling to, and dissect what is it that's important and what will resonate. Because anymore, I think it's crucially important to recognize that the buyer's journey starts the moment that the buyer says, I have this problem I need to solve for. They don't even realize you exist in the market yet. But when that awareness begins is when you need to make sure that you are on point, and whatever resources they find, either via LinkedIn, via Google, etc., they understand like, hey, XYZ company I think can solve for this problem. So really it's about connecting that marketing driven buyer's journey to a revenue focused sales cycle, and sales enablement helps with that handoff. I went off on a tangent with that for a second, but I'll get back to the question at hand, which is how do you think about onboarding and really helping to reiterate the ABM campaigns that you have? It's a couple things. I've found success from an internal training and development perspective of giving it a brand. Everyone loves a brand. We had a training program that admittedly needed a good polish and dust off when I took it over at a former organization. And when we added a brand to it and kind of relaunched the program with a slightly variance to the cadence, a little bit different format to the presentation of materials, one sales executive reached out and said, well, now that we have training solved for, can we work on this? And I took a step back. I'm like, wait a minute. We've always had this. This just didn't have a jazzy logo and like a name to it, but people gravitated towards it, right? And then the other part of it is keeping a continual cadence, be flexible in adjusting the content. So I'm not saying put out a whole 12-month content calendar, because as we all know, sales fluctuates and there's a little bit of shiny ball syndrome that happens, right? We're going to go this way. Oh, no, let's make a pivot that way. Oh, wait, that looks fun again. So you have to be flexible in the approach. But the idea is, for us, we were an enterprise size organization. We had over 70 products that we supported within the line of business that our sales teams needed to be affluent in. So what we made sure was we had once a month train, or actually, so it was a once a month training on a topic. We had a once a month kind of all hands forum that just talked about the latest product updates and releases. And then we had a weekly update newsletter that would go out. It might seem like it was a little oversaturation of content, but I feel like the other important thing to remember is that everyone consumes content differently. So perhaps someone didn't listen to my live product training, but they saw the replay note in the text, so then they could access it through there. Conversely, maybe someone listened to the live weekly product updates that we were giving, but they didn't read the newsletter. So they still were getting the content. It's just about packaging it and right sizing it for your audience.
That's mind blowing. So brand's not just for external, it's for internal as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
I think it was the Airbnb founders famously said, like, you're going to launch and no one's going to come, and you just got to keep launching again and again and again until like someone finally recognizes you.
I just saw something recently. This is going out on a tangent, but I was talking about the RX bar, and the original packaging for it had like blueberries on it, and it said like 12 grams of fiber, this, that. And it was a nice package, but it looked like every other package out there. And then they redesigned it to be very simple with a solid background and just put the ingredients like 3 egg whites, 4 almonds, blah, blah, blah. And it took off like a rocket.
Yeah, I've seen that. It looks completely different to what one would expect that bar to be. So, but it's crazy, the power of brand.
Power of brand.
Solid answer. Problem 4, feedback loop and adaptation. So this actually came as well. This was a question for adapting your ABM strategy on the fly, but maybe from an enablement perspective, we could talk about that. So, like, how do you facilitate like a feedback loop between sales and marketing? We just spoke about it somewhat there as well, with like kind of like the cadences, touch and base. How do you facilitate that feedback loop between sales and marketing to adjust kind of like the ABM strategy on the fly or in real time?
Sure, I think
if that's
the first step. I think the first step in working with the marketing team to understand where do we need to adjust the ABM campaign is really setting clear expectations before the campaign even begins. Everyone on the sales side, on the marketing side, who's involved in the campaign needs to understand what is happening when in the sequencing, and then aligning to certain checkpoints within the campaign. Let's say it's a 4-week campaign, maybe for something. Okay, let's say we're going to have a once a week checkpoint. at those checkpoints, we're going to analyze, what data elements do you want to see as far as performance? What are our expectations? Are they meeting those expectations? If not,
Hmm.
let's take a step back and see where maybe we can tweak and evaluate slightly. I think the last thing you want to do is have knee-jerk reactions to adjusting things, because as we all know, if you make too many adjustments all at once, your data is just going to be a clouded mess. You're not going to know what was truly successful versus not. So while I think we can get really excited about fixing something right away because we think it's not working, sometimes it's okay to let things marinate a bit, in my opinion, and
Hmm.
see how they react. Give them time to kind of adapt in the market. Now, I will say this is an area too where I lean on my ABM and demand gen partners within the marketing space to say, am I being unrealistic here? And I think we all have to give ourselves just a little bit of a sanity check to say, like, are we over promising here? Are we keeping in balance and aligned to where we want to be? That's super important.
And how do you know? Uh, are there like specific red flags you look out for? Maybe that's too much of a dating analogy. Alerts, I don't know what you want to call it in the business world, of like when uh, might be time to kind of swap the strategy out, because your answer followed what our last guest Drew said, who's the CEO of Attributor, on like attribution, and he pointed out something just like you: the knee jerk reactions, the full pivots. Something I used to do writing sales emails. I'd change more than one variable. I wouldn't know what worked, what didn't. Doesn't make sense. But have you got any like, right, this isn't working, I'm going to step in now and change it?
So, it's not a huge, broad example, but I'll just use my own personal experience. Noetic
Hmm.
at this point in time is a one-woman show, and you're looking at it. And, there is so one of the biggest learnings as going out as a solopreneur has been, oh, I have to do everything, including the demand gen. I don't have a team that's supporting me in doing that. So, okay, what's my
Yeah.
strategy? What's my approach? I was thinking, and I put together a sequence of cold email campaigns. I thought they were well written. I thought they were very authentic to me and what I wanted to deliver to the market. I feel like, unfortunately, there is an oversaturation of cold emails. The argument is law of large numbers, right? Like you send 300 out. Well, if you get three clients out of it, then you could say the campaign was a success because those were three clients you didn't have prior, right? Uh, it just, I want to say it just didn't work the way that I thought it would. I let the sequence go through. I made some tweaks to the email sequencing when I wasn't seeing the open and click through rates that I was hoping to. But I decided that, I think I'm just going to take a more personalized approach, and just through networking and, intros,
Yep.
warm connections, and that. So perhaps it's not the best example, but for me, it was one of this, putting it, and I think this is something important that sales teams need to realize. And I equate it to like an author writing a book. You can read a book in an afternoon. You don't realize the like blood, sweat, tears, and time that the author put into writing that book and how long that process takes. The same thing
Hmm.
for an ABM campaign. If you're writing sales emails, if you're writing, intro LinkedIn messages to try to grow a number of followers to the page, anything of the like, it takes time. And there is a little bit of art and science that's mixed in with it. And so to say, okay, we have to flip the script on this, it's not like I can snap my fingers and it happens. You really have to be intentional about what you're doing. And I think when you center the ABM campaign around intentionality and you can justify the reason for each of the steps in the campaign, then you're going to see, you'll have more clarity in the results that you're seeing. And I think it'll provide a more keen observation into what should we adjust for the next sequencing.
I totally agree with that. And I do have a question about that on tools, but I'll leave that to a later question. Problem five: tool and resource utilization. So, how do you ensure that the sales teams are effectively kind of using the tools and resources that either you've brought in, the ABM or demand gen teams have brought in? And yeah, I guess there's two elements to it as well. There's the training and the ongoing use of it. And
Yep.
I guess I would throw in there, not to make your life difficult last minute, but like, do you have any indicators? And would you be responsible in enablement for culling a tool if it's not getting any utilization?
Sure. So I think it's important to have first and foremost a feedback loop with your sales leaders, because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, while the sales team might enjoy working with me or working with our ABM partners, we're technically not the ones cutting their checks, right? they have to report back to their managers and their sales leaders. So it's important that the sales leaders are well attuned to what are the campaigns that we're delivering, what are where are we seeing success in the campaigns, right? And really selling them on this is an important way to go to market. It's very intentional. There is reason behind it. And we could see that reason in the results because we can see, a higher uptick in revenue, right? That's always the goal for sales folks. Anything you can attribute back to money, they're like, yes, I am all ears. The other thing too that I think is important, especially now that we're entering the last quarter of the year, is how do we get leads unstuck in the sales funnel? And if we could show that a proper ABM campaign can help them do that, then we're going to pique their interest a bit to learn more. But the point of myself saying all that from a sales leader perspective is they have to be the one to cascade that message to the team. So it's almost more important, in my opinion, to coach the sales leaders on what we're doing and giving them the sample talk track, really, right? Because at the end of the day, all any of us are doing are selling, whether you're selling to your internal stakeholders or you're in sales selling out to the market. So if we can win the sales leaders over and gain their trust in the activities we're doing, they're going to be more inclined to prompt their teams to do so. Last but not least, I think it's also important that incentives make all the difference as well. If I'm incentivized to do something and it's not just a goodwill gesture, then I'm more inclined to do it.
Well, that perfectly leads us on to the next question, which problem was how do we kind of align the incentives with the goals for the sales teams within kind of like an ABM project?
Yeah. And again, I think I talked a little bit about this before, right? But to me, one of my mantras is persistence over perfection. And really, it's about doing the right activities in the right way and doing them continually over and over again. You're going to yield the results that you want. Perhaps it's not going to be as quickly as you want. This is coming from someone that is not patient. Me. But I will tell you, it truly, like with an ABM campaign, you got to stay the course. You got to just trust the process and know that it's going to, in not all the cases, right? But in a majority of the cases, you're going to win over the folks that you're trying to prospect to, or what that end goal is that you had in mind for the ABM campaign. You will see results if it goes back to that intentionality and just being persistent in your efforts, being flexible and tweaking where you're needed, kind of taking an agile approach. But it's really just like staying the course and sticking with it to see it through.
And well, fun. And I've realised here I've actually given you 8 questions, not 7. I've been very cheeky here by throwing in Bass's question. But problem 7 was like metrics and performance tracking. So obviously, well, what role does Enablement play within that? And like, do they help set the benchmarks, if at all? And also, just to follow on from what you just said, and it's basic human like knowledge, right? If you're going to send out personalized invites and really get to know the people you're selling, obviously you're giving you a better chance to sell and win that deal eventually. But like, how do you know, Katie? Like, how do you know? Is it like a gut feel? And if it's a gut feel, how on earth do you kind of translate that to leadership about like, look, it will pay off in the end? So
yeah. So it's a couple things. It's balancing the ABM campaign with real life conversation, right? So I'll start with the last part of what you said, because I saw something recently and it really resonated with me. And it was, as you're in a sales conversation, most folks, they'll say, do you have any questions? How do you feel that the time went? Well, what are you inclined to respond with? It went great. This was awesome. Like, we'll get back to you. And then it's like this dead air space of, well, wait a minute. They said it went well, but it's been 2 weeks and I haven't heard from them. They haven't responded to my emails. So rather flip the script on it and you take a step back and say, Sam, I really enjoyed our time today, but I want to make sure that it was useful for you. What was missing? What still are you not clear about? And what can I answer for you? And put them on the spot to respond with like criticism, because then you're going to have a clearer picture of like, did we miss the mark or not? And they'll be more inclined to open up and be hopefully a bit honest with you about, their feelings and takeaways from the meeting. I was like, oh, I like that. And then I think it shows a little bit of sense of humility from the sales team as well. Like, we feel that we have the answers. We feel that we're the right solution for you and we know our product well. But at the end of the day, no one knows your company better than yourself and what you're looking for. So let's flip the script and make sure that we know that you're at the center of this conversation. And then I apologize. No,
it's so good. No one likes a squeaky clean salesperson anyway, do they?
Yeah.
They're like too well rehearsed.
Yeah. Exactly. Or the like, let me tell you what I'm going to do for you, salesperson. Like, no one needs the, that people just don't buy that way anymore. People want to buy the way they want to buy, and they want to be in control of the buying conversation. We can help, assist in that with a proper ABM campaign, with proper sales enablement. That's why I like to break down sales enablement into three things: strategy, communication, and operations. And I would
Mhm.
argue too that ABM could be broken down in the same way as well. That's where it's a nice little, while we run on parallel paths, there is this convergence point, right? Where we work together. I think sales enablement provides a little bit more of the translator voice of sales into marketing. And rightfully so, marketing can kind of help we can help translate from marketing back over to sales, like what these unified efforts are that we're trying to achieve. But back to the other question around how do we track metrics and performance for the ABM campaign. So to me, like the golden state would be is if the ABM campaign details can be tracked back to your CRM and tracked back to the sales funnel activities, because then you're really in lockstep with what is the process of moving from prospect to client to really it's moving from prospect all the way to client. To me, I think that the process needs to continue into client in life, because once you're a client, you're never really the sales process never really ends, because there's so many
Mhm.
opportunities to make sure we're delivering a winning client experience and then cross sell, upsell, etc. Right? But if you can get ABM content again aligned with the sales funnel activities, then you're going to see more buy-in from your sales teams, because they can directly correlate one to the other.
Awesome. And being more of a personal question, and I'm sorry, I know we've overrun, but I'm very curious. Being a solopreneur now,
Yeah.
um, do you empathize with sales more about like updating the CRM? Because I suck at it. Like as a small
I
company,
I
I
try to
can't do it.
automate while I can, where I can, for sure. I
Yeah.
can see I at the end of the day, I love the story data can tell, and it's so crucially
Mm.
important that your data is in the system. I will be the first to admit I probably do not have the best well kept system. I've automated again where I can. I'm not and I don't I've got a little bit of a steel trap of a memory. So, admittedly, I have a couple kids, so there's a little rust around that steel trap. But I have a pretty good memory, so I don't really need to take notes in the system all the time. However, I will preach it from the mountaintops that putting your information in CRM is so crucial, especially like from an not just from an accountability perspective, but we need that content from a, a sales enablement perspective to help inform the ABM campaign. We need to understand like what does our product interact with, what do our materials interact, how do they interact and operate in the wild or in the field with sales, to say what is the proper narrative, what is the proper messaging and the proper packaging of that messaging to get it out to market.
Back to the previous question. Do you ever align like how do you encourage sales to do that? Do you incentivize them to update the CRM, or are there bonuses tied into that, or is it all purely to do with revenue? Have you ever seen that? I don't know.
Um, if your information's not in the CRM, then you're not getting paid, I think is the cleanest way to do it, right? And also the sales leaders need to be bought into the CRM. If your sales
For
leader is
sure.
going in on a weekly basis, or whatever their cadence is to track the progress of their team, as you get to an enterprise level and you have teams globally, or teams across a national footprint, and they're maybe incentivized to compete, friendly competition amongst their other sales leaders in different regions, then they're going to be making sure they're on you about getting those systems and records updated. And I think it's also an element of one of the big. So I feel that I'm a pretty good manager of my time, but I've realized as a solopreneur, like there's a little bit of a mind shift that happens. And so allowing your teams like a block to say like, listen, every Friday from 8 to 10 a.m., that's your time to update the CRM. I don't want you working on anything else. You need to make sure your information from the prior week is all updated and available in the system. Because I think folks will always use the excuse that they're overburdened, they don't have enough time. Fine, I am
Mm.
giving you the time. Do not use anything else for this time.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Clearly, I'm not very good with time management because we've
No,
overshot.
you're
But
good.
the
I talk a lot.
Katie, last question. So this came in from Vas Cospanos. He is the EMEA and APAC regional marketing manager at Bug Crowd, which is an awesome company. Um, so his question again is to do with marketing sales. We've kind of touched upon it briefly throughout the kind of the whole interview here, but how can you achieve them working kind of in tandem towards the same goal rather than in their own silos? And I can kind of also add to this as from other guests that we had, like Brandon, he said how much information if you give sales too much information from marketing, they ignore it. Too little, it's pointless. Like it seems as if I don't know, you need to have regular contact and just deliver them the perfect amount of information. But I don't know, have you got kind of any golden nuggets on how to bring those teams together?
Sure. So what I'll say is I look at sales enablement as kind of the catwalk connecting the silos of sales and marketing. And for myself,
Mm-hmm.
one of my first objectives, in addition to making sure that I am critically close to the CRO, the VP of sales, and the team that I'm working with and functioning within, if I'm in a full-time role or even a fractional role, like I'm consulting and they are my client, right? And so that relationship is of the utmost importance in building trust. Number two to that is building trust with the marketing team, because I cannot do my job without the marketing team. And so often I have come into organizations where it's like marketing doesn't think sales does anything, sales doesn't think marketing does anything, and it's hardly the case. To your point, it just is, there is either an oversaturation of materials or sales feels like they need to build their own materials. That's a scary place to be. So it's like, okay, let's peel back the onion here and see what's really going on. And having a feedback loop of this is what sales is telling us is happening in the market and what clients, prospects are telling us. Help marketing understand that to better inform them the content that they're creating.
Mm.
ABM Demand Gen, there's so much product marketing, right? So much research that goes into understanding what are the market dynamics, what is the need for the solution that we're trying to solve for. And while it's all very important, the most important information comes from the mouths of the folks that we're trying to sell to. You need to make sure that there's a proper product market fit for the solution. So to me, trust is paramount, and it's demonstrating as a sales enablement professional that you can kind of help and facilitate that baton handoff. So it's a seamless transition again from that marketing driven buyer's journey to that revenue focused sales cycle. And not only is it a clean handoff, there's also this feedback loop. So it's not like a dotted line and marketing doesn't know, did we close the business? What did the client say? And for the end of the cycle. But then also at the beginning, the sales team is well informed of what was this buyer's experience in the beginning before we had a conversation with them. Have they looked at a white paper? Did they see us at a trade show? What were those activities that have already taken place so that we can facilitate an experience for the buyer that they say, not only do I think the solution is a proper fit for the need that we have, I like the company I'm working with too, because people buy from people they like, they know, and they trust.
I have so many follow up. That's a great answer,
Thank you.
and I like that. I like how you stress the importance of it being both ways as well. Because
Mm-hmm.
very early on, I spoke to my good friend Henry, who's the ABM manager at Security HQ, and he said there's a tendency that the closer it gets to the sale, the more they just don't want to give any credit to marketing, and it probably doesn't help kind of like the tension. But whereas if it's in tandem, you're both giving the pros and cons back to each other. That makes a lot of sense. I can see why you do this. You're in a neutral point of view as well from both of them. But I can see why you're very good
Yeah.
at this.
Very bipartisan.
Yeah. Just want results. Yeah, we don't care who does what, but let's just get it forward. Katie, you have been wonderful, as expected. But
This
my
is a
final
lovely
question:
chat. Thank you again.
do you have a question for our next guest?
I do. I need to read it again because I forgot it.
That's absolutely fine.
Okay. Okay. What is a simple way to explain to sales all the great work that marketing does without overcomplicating it? Because I feel that sales teams just think marketing is marketing. They don't realize that it's product marketing, that it's demand gen, that it's ABM, but there's so much value in all of these different tentacles that come out of marketing. So how do we translate that for sales so they really understand the intricacies and the level of detail that goes into proper marketing?
I feel like it's a great question, and I know, like on a marketing standpoint, I don't actually know who the next guest is. We've got a few, but I don't know in what order they're going to come. But I will ask it. But I also think it would be good to get a salesperson's opinion on this as well. So maybe like
Yeah.
an account exec or something. But yeah, I will include it. So yeah, Katie, that is everything. Thank you so much for chatting.
Thank you. This was fun.